Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another Borderlands 3 video. Today I'm going to be going over Moze, which is the last Vault Hunter we have yet to cover. I'm going to be going over her skill trees and give you guys some builds that I think are going to be the best for her, so let's get started. So I have two builds for you guys today. The first one is going to be centered around her Shield of Retribution skill tree. With this tree, our focus is going to be to have our shields up as often as possible, as high as possible, and getting them back up as quickly as possible if they ever go down, all while having a crap load of gun damage. So to start off, in the first row, we're going to take 5 points into Armored Infantry, which gives you 13% damage reduction and 15% more gun damage while we have our shields up. We then want to take 5 points into Drowning in Brass, which gives us a stack whenever we get a kill. Each stack decreases your fire rate by 2.5%, but increases your gun damage by 20%. These stacks last 15 seconds, and you can only have up to 3 of them, which means that at max stacks, you'll have 7.5 slower fire rate, but 60% increased gun damage, which is a lot. We then want to take 5 points into Vladov Ingenuity, which increases your max shield capacity by 30% and your shock damage resistance by 47%. And since shock damage shreds shields, it will become your worst enemy, which is why this skill is so important. We then also want to pick up Full Can of Whoop-Ass, which makes it so that whenever we go into our action skill Iron Bear, we and our whole team immediately start regenerating shields at an increased 25% recharge rate. I'm then also putting a point into Experimental Munitions, which causes 10% of the damage of our critical hits to be dealt as bonus incendiary damage, which is just basically free damage, so why not? Now, after that, we're going to take Thin Red Line, and what this does is that it cuts our HP by 60%, and adds that to our shield capacity. Now, since our health is going to be so low, we're going to want to take Desperate Measures, which increases our gun damage by up to 50% based on how low our health is. So though this combo might make you squishier, it will definitely make you more of a glass cannon and make your shield your main line of defense. Which is why we're also taking Force Feedback, which makes it so that our shields immediately start regenerating after a critical kill. And we're also going to put 5 points into Phalanx Doctrine. This skill also gives you a stack whenever you get a kill, but what this does is increase your shield capacity and gun damage by 15% and 10% respectively. These stacks last 30 seconds, but there is no limit to how many stacks you can have, which means you can potentially stack this up indefinitely, making yourself tankier and deadlier with every single kill. And finally, we're going to pick up the capstone for this tree, Tenacious Defense. This makes it so that if your shields ever go down, you will immediately restore them by 40%, as well as get a 30% increased gun damage buff. This is similar to a Nova in the sense that it can only happen once every time your shield is up, and the gun damage buff lasts 30 seconds. But if it ever goes down, you also have Force Feedback and Full Can of Whoop-Ass as a backup to regenerate your shields. As for the weapons Iron Bear will have, we'll pick up the Railgun from this tree alongside the Hell on Rails augment, which makes it shoot incendiary projectiles, but also the fuel drain per shot is increased by 30%. To counter that, we're going to take a dip into the blue tree real quick and pick up 3 levels of Deadlines, which decreases the fuel drain per Iron Bear weapon shots by 30%. Completely negating that downside from the augment, and it also gives us 6% fuel back whenever we get a kill while inside of Iron Bear. However, it does have diminishing returns. Moving on to the green tree, we're going to pick up Iron Bear's second weapon, the minigun. This works like every other minigun ever, okay? It spins up, heats up, and if it heats up, you'll have to wait a second for it to cool down before you can shoot it again. In the first row, we're going to take 5 points into Clouds of Lead, which makes it so that every 4 shots we don't consume ammo, and we deal bonus incendiary damage. This works with Iron Bear's minigun as well, which means you'll get a lot of bonus damage for free, basically. We're also going to take 5 points into Match Set, which increases your magazine size by 10% and reduces the amount of heat the minigun gets per shot by 11% for each piece of gear in your inventory of the same manufacturer. We then want to pick up our minigun augment, let off some steam in the second row, and what it does is increase the damage of the minigun as it spins up and heats up by up to 80%, and it also lets you shoot it for longer by about 35% before it overheats. We then want to pick up Stoke the Embers, which increases the damage of all our incendiary damage by 30%, which is great for our critical hits and railgun from our red tree. We then also want to pick up Redistribution, which regenerates 5% of our currently equipped weapons magazine per second for 3 seconds whenever we get a critical hit. Not a kill, a critical hit, which means you can consistently keep refilling your magazine as long as you're hitting crits. And with our last point, we're going to pick up Russian offensive, which lets Moze shoot and sprint at the same time. Being able to sprint and shoot makes it so that you can keep getting kills on the go, regenerating ammo on crits, making it so that you don't have to reload ever and you can just keep sprinting and shooting. And with force feedback, it will also regenerate your shield. And if you have your shield, you have your increased gun damage and damage reduction. Also, being able to move around a bit faster and get into the action, this also allows you to stack up more Phalanx Doctrine stacks, which is just fantastic. Moze definitely sounds like a ranged berserker, and I absolutely love it, and I cannot wait to play with her. However, I do have an alternative build which is even more berserkery. For this one, we're going to focus on the bottomless mags tree instead. So this is all about literally never ever reloading, just constant, consistent, never-ending DPS. In the first row, we're once again going to take 5 points into Clouds of Lead, and we're going to put in just 1 point into Match Set so that we can move down the tree later on. After that, we are once again going to take Russian Offensive, but then we're also going to put 5 points into Scorching RPMs, which increases our fire rate and critical hit damage by 15% and 20% respectively. We're then going to take 5 points into the Iron Bank to increase our mag size by 35%. Now remember, we are doing percentage-based ammo regeneration with a bunch of different skills here, which means we want to have as big of a magazine as possible so that when we regenerate ammo, we're getting more ammo per second. After that, we're putting 1 point into Some for the Road, which gives us unlimited ammo for 5 seconds after exiting Iron Bear, and it remains to be seen whether or not this applies to rockets. If it does, first of all, that's insane, but if it doesn't, then maybe you can consider putting this point somewhere else. I still think it's going to be pretty good anyway. Regardless, we're going to put 3 points into Click Click, which increases our gun damage by up to 36% based on how empty our mag is. And considering the fact that we're basically going to always keep refilling our ammo inside of our magazine, we're going to constantly have a fluctuating gun damage buff that's going to help us kill things and keep going. And finally, we're going to put a point into a Capstone Forge, which will just consistently regenerate 5% of our gun's magazine. Moving on to Demolition Woman, we're going to put 5 points into Grizzled, which reduces Iron Bear's cooldown by 5 seconds after each kill, however with diminishing returns. We want this so that we can proc Some for the Road as often as possible, as well as keep ourselves healthy since we are picking up full can of Whoop-Ass from our red tree as well. Speaking of which, moving on to our red tree, we're also going to take Armored Infantry once again, and Drowning in Brass, but we're not going to take Thin Red Line because we can't get to all of our shield regenerating perks down this tree like we would have wanted to. So instead, we're just going to strengthen our shields a bit by picking up Vladoff Ingenuity and getting ourselves an oh shit button with full can of Whoop-Ass. And with our last point, I also picked up Experimental Munitions since it's just free damage and we have the enhanced incendiary damage from Stoke the Embers as well. Overall, I think both builds are going to be very strong. She definitely looks like she's going to be a boss killer for sure, really good at taking out mobs too. So I might prefer the shield-based build a bit better just on paper, since the way that her defenses are set up also kind of turn them into an offense, which is a huge turn on for me. Anyway guys, that about wraps up Moze, and that about wraps up this series of pre-release Borderlands 3 build videos. I'll be playing the shit out of this game when it comes out, but Iceborne is less than 2 weeks away, boys, and I cannot wait. I will be trying to stream it, so let's just see how that goes. Links to the builds as well as my Discord are in the description as always, and I want to thank you guys for watching, and I also want to thank my patrons for their continued support, especially my boy John. Thank you so much for the support, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.